Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Anca and I do art and illustration related videos and sometimes tattoo related videos. So if you're into that, make sure you subscribe and check out the other videos on my channel. So in today's video, I wanted to show you guys how I made these fridge magnets using air dry clay. For this project, you will need air dry clay, a kind of stencil made from cardboard, some clay sculpting tools. Mine are from Magic Fly, you don't need all of those, a ruler, some water, and that's basically it. You don't need any fancy tools. A wooden stick will suffice to do the job. So I am using Das air dry clay for this project. It's the clay I've been using for years. It works perfectly fine. It dries within 24 to 48 hours, depending on how large your piece is. And I start off by rolling out my clay. I roll it as it would be like a pizza dough, and make sure you work in some water if it's a bit dry, just so you loosen up the clay. And then I use my stencil to cut out the shape of the fridge magnet. Now I wanted to do some magnets that look like wall shrines or small shelves. I wasn't sure about the design I would paint on them. As you will see, I changed my mind. But basically you want to cut out your main shape and then you want to do the edges. So for the edges, I rolled out kind of a rectangle piece and wrapped it around my main shape. To blend the two pieces together, I use a scoring technique, which is basically making small indents in the parts where you want to join them, and using a bit of water to join them, and also a sculpting tool to blend the two pieces together on the sides. I hope that makes sense. It's quite an easy technique once you get the hang of it, but it does take a while to perfect. So I do this with the main edge and the edge on the bottom. I use the same technique, the scoring technique. I didn't measure anything. It was basically a freehand air dry clay project. I didn't have a very clear idea of how I wanted them to look. I just knew the shape I wanted to achieve. This process is a bit tedious. You will have to blend them very well together, so once it's dry, they don't fall apart or your project is ruined. As you can see, I did take my time with this in perfecting the shape as best as I could. Of course, it's much harder to do a very precise shape without having air dry clay cutters or any additional tools, but I think for this project it worked fine. So I let my pieces dry for about 48 hours before I start sanding them. As you can see, this is how they look dry. And once they are dry, I use a fine sandpaper to smooth out any edges or creases that were left behind. Please use a mask while sanding. That dust from the air dry clay is very harmful for your lungs if you inhale it, so please be careful while doing this process. I also use a wet brush to remove any excess dust once I'm finished sanding. This is a good technique, or you can use a sponge just so the area is smooth once you want to start painting it. So for decorating these pieces, I used acrylic paint from Artistro. I usually use gouache with my air dry clay projects, but the varnish I have right now is not compatible with gouache. It does disturb the paint, and I decided to go with acrylic just so my design is safe once it's varnished. So I used kind of a turquoise on the outside, and on the inside I went with a pink, and on the rim of the magnet I added a bit of gold, as you will see. Again, this is a very tedious process because you have to make sure that the edges are nice and sharp, and yeah, paint gets everywhere on your hands, but I personally love painting them. It's very therapeutic for me. So as you can see, I had an original design in mind, and then I wanted to do something more contemporary. I didn't want to go with a folk style illustration on them. In the end, I went with a checkered background and a heart in the middle. I wanted to keep them simple. So I'll let you watch the rest of the painting process. It did take me quite a while to paint all of them with drying in between layers and everything. And I will see you at the end of the video where I explain the varnishing process and how I attach the magnets on the back. So once all your paint is dry and you have finished with the design on them, I attached the small magnet coins. I bought them from an art and hobby supply store quite a while back, knowing that I wanted to do some magnets, but I didn't have a chance to do so. And I attached them using super glue, which was very sticky, and do be careful with this process. I got it on my fingers and it took 2 days for me to get it off, so please be more precise than I was. For the varnish, I use this Pebeo gloss varnish. It's an acrylic based varnish, so it works perfectly fine with the paint I used on them. And I use a wooden stick to apply the varnish, just so I don't ruin any of my brushes. This one I can just throw away once I'm done with it. So I varnish one side, then leave it to dry, and then after 2 days I varnished the other sides. And yeah, this is basically my process. I hope you guys find it interesting. These magnets will be going out to my patrons as monthly rewards. If you're interested in becoming a patron, I will leave a link to my Patreon in the description box below and somewhere on the screen. And let me know your thoughts on this project, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!